we start to feel like, yeah, I can do this. It takes some effort, but I can do it.
Welcome to the Strong Mind, Strong Body podcast. I'm Jenn.
And I'm Laurie. Grab your water bottle.
And grab your healthy snack, and let's go.
Hello and welcome back to Strong Mind, Strong Bodies podcast. We are headed into week 4 of the challenge.
Yeah, we are excited that we are talking about soak it in. And that means so many things to so many people, whether it's water, drinking enough water or getting in the pool, or just being mindful of our surroundings and soaking in the positives and celebrations that we have occurred so far. In this podcast today, though, we are focusing all in on nutrition and mindless eating.
Yes, we are. And we are so fortunate and happy to have Laurie Lucas here. And she is one of our registered dietitians on staff here at the YMCA. And she's fairly new to the Y, but not new to doing this or this field. She has had a great career. And Laurie, why don't you just kind of tell us a little bit more about what you've been doing, what you're doing at the Y now, and a little bit about yourself.
Beautiful. Well, thank you, Jenn and Laurie. Very excited to be here. Thank you for the invitation. I'm looking forward to this lively conversation. So my background, I took a little bit of a winding road to get to where I am today. So I actually started out in the business world, kind of had it all mapped out. I was going to take accounting and I was going to go right on up to becoming a certified public accountant. And when I got to about the intermediate accounting classes, a little bit of panic set in. And I thought,
oh, that's funny.
So I regrouped, kind of continued in the business world for, several years, and it was fine. But through a corporate layoff, it gave me the opportunity to really think, where do I want to go next? Where's my passion? What do I get excited about? And when I really thought about it, it was all things related to nutrition, health and well-being, cooking. And so from there, I just pursued the path to become a dietitian. And fortunately, we have a wonderful university close by. It's Mount Mary University. And they have a great program. So I went to school part-time, and over 18 years later, I have never regretted that decision.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah. Yes.
That's wonderful. So what do you do for us now here at the Y?
Oh, great question. So what I do one-on-one nutrition coaching with the members. Either I meet them on site, or we can do telephone or Zoom type of calls, but essentially really personalizing their nutrition needs and breaking down the information that can sometimes be kind of clunky or complicated to get through. I really just help them navigate that and, again, personalize it. So the nutrition coaching is one. A second area is the cooking demos, which have been, fabulous so far. Gives me an opportunity to be in this beautiful teaching kitchen in New Berlin. And also I'll be doing some off-site, like corporate cooking demos. We might even take the show on the road at different Ys.
Ah, that's so exciting. Looking forward to that.
Yes. And there will be some upcoming presentations that I'll be doing on blood pressure. And then anything that I can do to support the healthy living program for the Y, that is my role here.
Awesome. Well, I know we're so happy to have you. You've been a great addition to our team. And when we think about the Stronger Together Challenge, week 4, like Laurie mentioned, was soaking it in. And, that can mean a lot of things. What, from a dietary perspective, what does that theme sort of mean to you?
What I noticed on, the survey responses and the theme, I really appreciated the mindfulness recognition. So I think the soaking it in, excuse me, it relates to taking the time, appreciating when we do have an opportunity to have our meals, have our snacks. I know realistically that's not always possible. People are so busy these days, But honestly, just having the meal should be enjoyable. We should take our time with it. And if we can only do that with one meal a day, fabulous. But really, again, just honing in, being mindful, and appreciating it, it just makes a world of difference.
Excellent. What do you have any recommendations for, you mentioned it's hard for people to find the time to be mindful with everything, or just take the time to really focus on their nutrition and make it a priority. What are some quick, easy things that people can incorporate, like quick snacks, quick meals? What's your advice for those that just feel like they don't have the time? What are some things that they can do to combat that or even change their mindset?
Oh, I like the change the mindset part that you tacked on there. I would say to try to really simplify it. Meal prep or getting snacks together, it does not have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be perfect. In fact, that's not even an attainable goal.
Sure.
But it just keep things on hand, quick things that you can grab, whether that be kind of nuts or peanut butter or, dried fruit or canned items, anything that you've got it on hand. You don't have to run out and grab something at the grocery store. And again, it's portable, it's packable. And really, I guess the key to this all is just taking a little bit of time to plan ahead so that you do have the things on hand when you need them.
Laurie, do you have any specific examples, what that looks like?
Sure. So, again, everyone's different. They're all going to have different likes and preferences. But in the morning, if you make ahead like some baked egg cups, you make like scrambled eggs and you pour it into a muffin tin. You bake those. You've got about a dozen of them right off the bat. So they're good to go for the week, or you can freeze some. And then let's say you're really rushing around in the morning. You just reheat really quickly one of those egg cups. Maybe you throw it between an English muffin or in a pita pocket or what have you. And you're out the door. Maybe you take a granola bar to go with that, or a banana, whatever works. So again, it's just a little bit of that planning ahead. You've got it, you can grab it, and you're good to go. Or another one is the baked oatmeal. That can be made ahead, or overnight oats. So things like that where just a little bit of advanced time really saves you the next day.
We've talked in the past about if we fill our bodies with good foods, we don't crave those bad foods. What advice do you have, or what input do you have when it comes to that philosophy?
Well, it's an excellent one, actually, because what's that saying? If we something about planning and failing or not planning.
Oh, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail.
Yes. Yeah. So it's kind of along those lines, because if we are left defenseless when we head out for our day, what do we have for options? It's usually going to be a vending machine, or the coffee shop is going to be calling our name. And so when we just take back that control and have something ready to go, then you're prepared no matter what your day brings you. So again, it's sort of like going on the offensive before we get lured into those maybe less than healthy choices out there.
That kind of reminds me of another question. So speaking of on the go things and grab and go kind of stuff and having things with you, I feel like there are a lot of options out there and a lot of things that are marketed as healthy or people assume are healthy. Are there any kind of misconceptions that you see that people think something's healthy and you're like, actually, maybe not, or things that we should be looking for in those maybe convenience type foods?
Good question. Granola comes to mind. I mean, it can be a really healthy option, but there are ones that are going to be high in maybe some less healthy ingredients. So I'd say take a look at granola. Same thing for yogurts. It's an excellent quick protein option. Just check the nutritionals. Does it have a lot of added sugar to it? Maybe that's what you want to look for. And then I guess just cereals in general. Again, they are awesome options. Grab and go. Check the amount of added sugar. They're typically very low in fat, so you don't have to worry about that. But I would say things like that, or granola bars. That's another one that can really be sneaky Yeah.
There's so many varieties.
There is. So kind of look for ones that are maybe more basic, more simple, fewer ingredients, so you know what you're getting. And just check that added sugar and if it's high in certain kinds of fats. Now, that's a lot for a person to try and keep track of. So I would say hone in on one thing. Maybe check the sugar content or something like that.
So another thing that comes up a lot, and we've touched on it a couple weeks ago with Chelsea, we talked about it from a fitness and physical standpoint, but curious your thoughts on nutrition. A lot of people have weight loss goals, and that's their main priority, and that's what they're really striving for. So speaking from nutrition point of view, what should they be looking for that? Do you have some general advice to help people in that journey?
Really keep in mind that everybody is unique. Everybody has their own needs. Everyone has a different lifestyle. So whatever approach someone decides to move forward with, I really encourage people to keep in mind that it is not a one size fits all, right? Whether it be intermittent fasting or, whatever it might be, that's not going to work for everybody. Mm-hmm. And if an eating plan requires somebody to do a whole lot of cooking or grocery shopping for specific ingredients, again, that's not going to be a good fit. So I really encourage people to find out what it is that they need. And also the other thing is to look for what I call the low-hanging fruit. Like, are there areas that we know could use improving? Do we eat out a lot? Do we snack in the evening? Are we skipping meals? Those are sometimes the best places to start.
I like that. That's smart.
Yeah.
If somebody does start to make changes like that, what's a realistic time frame for them to feel a difference or start noticing differences? And again, I'm sure it's personal, but is there kind of a broad?
I think having non-scale measurements are always nice because the scale is not the only way to see if we're making progress, right? Like their sleep could improve. And that could be worth $1 million right there. So slow and steady with the changes. I always encourage people to give yourself time. You're trying to undo maybe some habits or routines that have been going on for several years. So those will not change overnight. But if you're asking about weight loss, in particular, honestly, anything from a half a pound, maybe up to 2 pounds a week is very reasonable and sustainable.
I love that you brought up non-scale measurements. Again, something we've talked about before from a fitness aspect, but from the nutrition, I know personally, every time, if I'm doing really good and eating the foods I know I should, it's amazing. Yes, the sleep, I sleep better. I have more energy. Sometimes I'm like, my skin looks great. There are so many other measures of how you're doing, but also just how much your nutrition affects every part of your body. So I think that's a really great reminder. So thank you for bringing that up. Another question that we saw in a lot of different variations and comes up, I feel like a lot, is protein. A lot of people now are trying to find new ways to get protein in, or they've realized how important protein is to their diet and how a lot of people aren't getting enough protein. So I guess that's my first question. Is that something that you see a lot, is that people are not getting enough protein in their diet? Is that common, or as common as it seems to be now? It seems to be a hot topic.
It does. What I usually find is people get plenty of protein.
Okay.
Yep. Without really even having to work at it. But I think it's, maybe to your point, the perception that we're not getting enough, or recommendations that, encourage us to get huge amounts of protein. Honestly, most individuals do not have any problem at all meeting their daily protein recommendations. And the only people that might have a little bit more of a challenge, but certainly it's very doable, would be if they're entirely plant-based. But within that, there are still plenty of plant-based protein. So honestly, I would say not really a challenge to get the protein. It's maybe more adjusting the perception.
Okay. If somebody is trying to get more protein, do you have any recommendations of ways to do that?
Sure. If they don't have a dairy intolerance, yogurt, string cheese, cottage cheese, dairy milk. If they do have a dairy intolerance, soy milk is probably the next best option. Otherwise, there are all kinds of beans, like starchy beans, black beans, kidney beans, garbanzos, edamame, seeds, nuts, nut butters. Those would all be additional protein sources for a person that might be struggling to find more protein. And of course, the meat, chicken, fish, leaner proteins would all be options for getting in protein.
What about protein powders or getting it in that way? I guess my first question is, are they a good source? What do you recommend people look for? There's so many kinds and they all have very different ingredients. If somebody is wanting to look for a protein powder to kind of bring some more into their diet, what are your recommendations to look for?
I think in that realm, if somebody really feels that they are struggling getting their protein in, kind of the protein powder would be plan B. And the reason I say that is because if we can get that protein in through our diet, it's going to bring along with it so many other nutrients. Okay, so it's kind of like having the conductor and the symphony working together versus maybe just the conductor on its own. So best ones to look for depends again. If a person has a dairy intolerance, they would have to take that into account. Otherwise, maybe something that's more plant-based, simpler ingredients, not a lot of added extra things that a person might not need. And the other thing to be aware of, some of the protein powders, they're not as well regulated as they ought to be. So we're never really sure if what's on the label is what you're getting. So just some things to be aware of. And again, use it as a backup plan if you're really struggling to get it in through your diet.
Sounds good. Water. How much should we be drinking?
The age-old controversy.
Right? It is.
Yes. That really is going to vary dependent upon so many factors. So again, it's kind of a unique individual need. However, if we're just going to try to go for a blanket general recommendation, we're going to look at it as fluids, right? So we can get fluids from the water, coffee, tea, milk, things like that, and in our food. So just an easy thing to think of is like watermelon, right? There's so much water in there. So we're going to look at total fluid intake and honestly, just a general benchmark, 60 to 100 ounces a day of fluid is really going to cover most people's needs.
Another question that comes up with this a lot is, why do we need so much water? Why does our body need it? Do you have some good words of wisdom for that to help explain?
Yeah, let's see. I guess one of the things to know is, our body is made up of it's not exact, but about 2/3 of it is water. So if 2/3 of our entire system is water, we need to be sure we replenish that and keep it at optimal levels as much as possible. And in addition to that, it's just good to drink more often because, well, you've probably heard this. Sometimes we think we're hungry, but we really just need some water. So that's another good reason. And then you brought up the healthy skin, or you noticed the difference. Great for skin, bones, joints, all that kind of thing. So water is just a really great overall thing to try and get more of.
So if somebody is going from being pretty sedentary to starting to train and be more physically active, how do they know how much water do they need? Do they need to adjust what they're doing? How do they know?
One of the best markers is the color of your urine, right? That's how we kind of gauge what the body's doing with hydration levels. So you want that to be kind of more of a paler yellow. It does not have to be clear. So just again, a little bit paler yellow will give you an idea that your hydration status is, right about where you'd want it.
Something that I recently have been exposed to is tracking macronutrients. Can you talk a little bit about macronutrients, and then maybe we can dive into what that means?
Sure. So the macronutrients, those are what we consider our larger classifications of nutrients. So really they comprise or are comprised of carbohydrates, fat, and protein.
How important is it for us to make sure that we are, balanced through the macronutrients? And are there easy ways to track that?
So the purpose for, incorporating all three is that they all three do play a really important role in the body. So, without going too far down the road here of biochemistry, each one, again, has a major role to play. Like the carbohydrates are fueling our workouts. They're the main energy source for our brain. And they do just so much for us. And then conversely, protein, it helps us, build and rebuild muscles. And when I say build, it's not the protein that's building that muscle. That is the individual doing the workout. But the protein helps rebuild and support that muscle building process. And then fat, we need that for certain, hormonal needs in the body and for fat soluble vitamins, things like that. So that's a very quick and not very descriptive explanation. But again, each one of those macronutrients plays a really important role. So we want to try and include them all. And then your question of, is there an easy way to track them? There are really some good free fitness tracking apps out there. You do not need a paid subscription. And if a person's just curious, how much protein am I getting? How many carbohydrates? Or what's my total fat for the day? If you just do a short duration of tracking via one of those apps, that'll give a person a pretty good idea.
Laurie, would you say that's individual? Each of those levels would be individual to a person's height, to a person's weight, to a person's activity?
Absolutely. And thank you for bringing that up. It is definitely individualized.
We had some other specific questions that came through the survey and through passing. One of those questions was 2,000 calories per day. Is this correct to have for an active person? What does that look like?
So it might be accurate for some individuals, but we would look at, are they male or female? What is their age? What is their height? What is their weight? What's their activity level? So really, again, we tailor that calorie level to all those factors. So when you see on the nutrition facts label, it will say, based on a 2,000 calorie per day diet, that's kind of just a random or general reference that was used. That is absolutely not going to be suitable for everybody.
Some of the responses as well talked about calorie deficit. Is it a true statement or is it myth that if you intake a calorie deficit, that leads to weight loss?
That part is true. The tricky part can be figuring out, what do we subtract that deficit from? What is our starting number, right? Mm-hmm. So figuring that out, and there are calculators out there that can do that, but sometimes people over-restrict, thinking I really have to pull back on my calories or I'm not going to lose weight. There can reach a point where that's counterproductive, and the body's just it's not going to let go of any weight because it really perceives that it's not getting the daily fuel amount that it needs. And so it's just going to slow down that metabolism.
It's just like overtraining. It's too much of a good thing, and your body is going to protect itself. It's built to do that.
Exactly. Great analogy on that, Jen.
So if somebody is looking at a deficit, so I just want to make sure you're recommending start small. But then how do they sustain it after? How once they hit that weight loss, do they always need to keep restricting? Is there a way to build it back up? Or what does that look like then if they've reached their goal?
Again, good question. It'll be so unique, and it depends on how much the person is looking to lose. And to your point, yes, once they get to their weight loss, you wouldn't want to go back to the original calorie level because you're going to regain that weight. So yes, basically, once you adjust those calories, eventually you are still going to be at a lower level, maybe not as low as you were for the weight loss, though. You're probably going to add some back to maintain your weight.
Sure.
Speaking of habits and maintaining, a big question that came through the survey was, how do we wean off a high carb, high sugar diet? What are some tips and tricks that you can, where it's maybe not so traumatic and where they feel good about their changes and not, it won't be a negative effect? Because obviously the long-term range, the long-term goal is to keep with this as a lifestyle change. And if we have any negative feelings about something, it's harder to keep it going.
Absolutely. Couple of things maybe to try is, well, first of all, pick one thing at a time, right? Because if we're asking ourselves to make too many changes, it's hard to stick with that. So I would say look for the thing that a person feels is most problematic. Okay. Is it sweets, snacks, desserts, things like that?
That low-hanging fruit again.
Yes, there you go. Because that's how we build up those quick wins. Right?
I love that.
Yeah. And we start to feel like, yeah, I can do this. It takes some effort, but I can do it. And then just like if it's sweets, one of the first intermediate steps is try to incorporate more fruit, because you got the natural sweetness there, but it's going to come along with some extra goodness like fiber and things to fill you up. So that's a good first step. And again, keep it simple. Pick one thing at a time.
We have a survey question. Energy is an issue during a workout day. What are your best snacks to have that will keep you going without killing your waistline?
For that question, one of the things I want to make sure that I bring forward is start with a good meal routine, for the day. So we don't want to have to rely on snacks to get us through. If we can have some good foundational meals planned throughout the day, then those snacks just kind of become an enhancement. Between that and then getting plenty of sleep, those things are going to be factors with our energy level. And then if a person does need a snack, say it's longer than maybe 4 to 5 hours between your meals. That's when you want to plan to have a snack so that you don't get too hungry and you feel that energy kind of, dissipating and you really want to get through that workout. So yeah, again, foundationally, aim for at least 3 good meals a day. Try not to go too long between them and have some snacks ready to go. Quick things, nuts, nut butters, banana, dried fruit, things like that.
Right. We have another survey question. I'm really getting into plant-based whole foods. I am 2/3 vegetarian and would like to get an idea of portion sizes when veggies and beans are the main event.
Well, kudos to the working toward the plant-based. There's so much, just a mountain of evidence out there for plant-based eating being one of our, healthiest approaches. Not everybody's ready for that. That's absolutely fine. But for anybody that is going down that path, lots of great benefits. So for portion sizes, if a person is familiar with the My Plate, which essentially, if you're looking down at your dinner plate and you draw a line left to right, the top half is going to be vegetables or a combination of vegetables and fruit. And then on the bottom half, divide that into 2. In 1/4 section would be the protein, the beans, the lentils, quinoa, things like that, tofu. And then in the other little 1/4 section, grains, rice, bulgur, pasta, whole wheat pasta, things like that. So if you divide the plate up like that, that really just gives you guidance on how to portion things out.
We talked a little bit earlier about intermittent fasting and not skipping meals. What is your thought about those? Some have tried it. And again, I'm referencing another survey question. They would like to know why intermittent fasting hasn't worked for them and what is a better alternative.
Well, first off, great recognition on the person that wrote that in, because they realized that didn't work for them. And so just taking a step back and figuring out, why didn't it? What parts of it weren't really helpful for me? Was I getting too hungry? Did the timing not work? Did it not work with when my family usually eats? It's really, I always like to say, take a curiosity approach. Why didn't that work? And then once you figure out what elements of it didn't work, then you personalize it and come up with a plan that works better for each person. So again, kudos to that person for recognizing and not feeling like they did anything wrong. They absolutely did not. They tried something that really just wasn't a good fit for them.
This goes back to how everything is individual, right? I mean, what might work for someone will not work for me or Jen or you. It's really listening, soaking in, like going back to our theme, soaking into what works for us and what's not working for us so that we can take the right path.
Well, and a good reminder too, that you might have to try multiple things. It's just like the physical piece of it. If you try something and it doesn't work, you didn't fail. You just need to try something else and take a different approach and just keep going.
There's no such thing as failing. It's only learning.
Exactly.
Right? I have one last question from the group. Cooking with foods in low potassium. These people have heart meds, have high levels of potassium, and they need to watch that hidden danger. What are some ideas that you have or recommendations that you have for those individuals?
That one is a little bit more specialized, but one of the things that they can do if they need help with finding like high potassium food lists, I mean, certainly I'd be happy to help them out with that, but you're kind of just wanting to avoid the highest potassium. And typically, if that's over like 200 or 300 milligrams per serving of potassium, those would probably be ones that they would want to limit. And then, again, gravitate more toward the lower potassium ones and use that as a building block when they're planning their meals.
I have a bonus fun question that wasn't part of the initial list, just because I'm mostly curious. So obviously in doing what you do, you hear a lot of people and their thoughts and opinions and things. What do you think is the biggest misconception when it comes to nutrition, or just kind of the biggest myth that you hear over and over and you have to just tell people, that's not exactly right, or you just wish would stop being put out, misinformation that's being put out in the world? Because everyone's an expert now.
Thank you indeed. Yes, you are right. I think one of the biggest ones that has just been around for so long, because it keeps reinventing itself in different ways, but it's the fear of carbohydrates. They're villains. They're bad for me. I have to avoid them. I can't eat them or I won't lose weight. And it's just that the message it just needs more defining. So of course, eating a lot of sweets or processed carbohydrates, of course, those aren't going to be healthy for us. But then it cuts out a whole grouping of good carbohydrates, our fruits, milk, yogurt, whole grains. So I think that's one of the things. And because of certain diet approaches that have really been popular over the years, there is just an inherent fear of carbohydrates. Yep. So I just try to really, first of all, I recognize it and appreciate it. And I try to work with the person to say, look, I completely understand you're afraid to bring them back in. But then we gradually work on just bringing in some sources that they prefer.
Well, thank you so much, Laurie, for speaking with us today. Lots of great information. And again, you do currently actively work with us at the YMCA. So if anybody is looking for one-on-one training with a registered dietitian or nutritionist, we have a whole team. Laurie is one of them. So you can find more information about that on our website.
Yeah, thank you so much for bringing your passion and your knowledge of nutrition. This conversation could be expansive. Yes, exactly. There's so many questions out there, and we at YMCA of Greater Waukesha County are just so honored and thankful that we have a great team, including you, to help guide those questions and those individual plans, because like you said, one size does not fit all. And we're finding that with every part of this wellness journey through Stronger Together. So thank you so much for your time.
You are welcome. It's been a pleasure to be here. I'm happy to answer all those questions that came in on the survey, and it's just been a joy to talk with the both of you as well.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Strong Minds, Strong Bodies this week.
This podcast was brought to you by YMCA of Greater Waukesha County.
Don't forget to follow the podcast so you can hear more each week on the conversation of health and wellness. We hope to see you in our Facebook group, and we'd love to interact with you there. And check out your weekly email for lots more tips and activities that you can do to stay on track toward your goals.